Perhaps the most important villain for an adaptation of Secret Wars is Victor Von Doom. Now, make no mistake, Dr. Doom is already a major player in the Marvel Universe, but when it comes to Secret Wars, there are few characters who have a bigger impact on the story than him. In the original 80s version, Doom quickly establishes himself as the leader of the villains transported to Battleworld, and sets into motion a plan to turn himself into an all-powerful cosmic entity. However, that's nothing compared to the 2015 Secret Wars, in which Dr. Doom appoints himself God Emperor of the universe following an incursion. He serves as the main antagonist of the overall story, and almost every action taken by the heroes over the course of it is in service of stopping Victor. Simply put, there's pretty much no way to do a faithful adaptation of 2015 Secret Wars without including him. And this, combined with the fact that we've got a Fantastic Four movie coming out in 2024, basically makes Doom's MCU arrival a certainty. The rumor mill has been running wild lately, with claims that the ruler of Latveria will be set up as the Marvel Cinematic Universe's next big antagonist after Kang, and this speculation has only been bolstered by reports that he'll be the one orchestrating the war between Namor's people and the Wakandans in Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. No matter what ends up happening in that film, it's clear that Marvel Studios has big plans for Victor Von Doom, which may ultimately climax in his ascent to near godhood in Secret Wars.
I am inevitable.
Throughout the Infinity Saga, Thanos was Marvel Studios' greatest overarching threat. His fearless plan to collect the Infinity Stones made him a truly imposing force, and his actions changed the MCU forever. Now, I'm not really one of those people who thinks that characters should always be brought back from the dead. In fact, it's one of the biggest issues I've had with the MCU in the past. However, I do think it would be a lot of fun to see Thanos come back for Secret Wars, if for no other reason than to really demonstrate just how high the stakes really are. The not-so-jolly purple giant wasn't involved in the original 80s Secret Wars, but he did appear as a supporting character in the 2015 incarnation. There, he led the villainous Cabal in an attempt to depose Dr. Doom and steal his power, only for the newly crowned God Emperor to rip out his skeleton, taunting him about his no longer possessing the Infinity Gauntlet. Quite a way to go for one of the Marvel Universe's most dangerous villains, and of course he does come back to life at the end of it all, but this comic panel is permanently burned into many readers' eyes forever. I'm thinking Thanos could essentially play the same role in the MCU, setting up a forcible passing of the torch between him and Dr. Doom. It would be great to see Josh Brolin put on the mocap suit one last time, especially considering just how many characters will be seemingly folded into Avengers 6. What better way is there to cement Doom as one of our next big bads than to have him utterly destroy the MCU's previous big villain? In my mind, this would happen in a similar manner to Wanda's massacre of the Illuminati in Multiverse of Madness. My only hope is that it just feels less, what's the term? Unnecessarily fanservice-y.
The Illumawati?
The Beyonder is the all-powerful cosmic being who set the Secret Wars in motion in the first place, transporting a bunch of heroes and villains to the planet Battleworld for them to duke it out. While he claims to be doing this as a study into the battle of good and evil, it was pretty clear that he was really just getting a ton of enjoyment out of bashing some toys together, Grandmaster style. But this bit him in the butt when Dr. Doom stole his powers. The Beyonder was eventually able to possess the body of Ulysses Klaw, long story, and reclaim his powers, before sending all the heroes and villains back to Earth. However, it seems like he never really learned his lesson, as he's popped up several more times over the years, and it was revealed in 2007 that the Beyonder is both a mutant and an Inhuman. Gotta love those retcons, baby. Depending on which version of Secret Wars the MCU adapts, the Beyonder doesn't necessarily need to appear in order for the story to work, but I can't deny that it would be really fun to see him on the big screen. His almost childlike curiosity combined with his vast power make him a really unique character, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe doesn't really have anyone else like him. He's another person who could be used to demonstrate Dr. Doom's true threat level, and if nothing else, they could use him to further establish mutants and Inhumans in the MCU. Speaking of Inhumans, let's talk about Maximus the Mad. He's the brother of Black Bolt, who's developed a deep hatred for the rest of his species due to his apparent lack of powers. For as long as the Inhumans have been around, so has Maximus, putting together countless plans to take the throne of Attilan for himself. During the 2015 Secret Wars, the Mad Inhuman was a member of Thanos' Cabal. Using the alter ego of the Prophet, Maximus led an uprising against God Emperor Doom, attempting to storm the villain's castle and depose him. Suffice it to say that it didn't really go too well for him. We've already met a version of Maximus in the MCU, with him having served as the main villain of the short-lived Inhuman series. Of course, that show was met with near-universal derision, and it's seemingly been exiled from MCU canon. Still, considering the fact that we saw Anson Mount reprise his role as Black Bolt recently, it wouldn't surprise me too much if they ended up bringing back the show's version of Maximus as well. His portrayal was one of the few things about the Inhuman series that received praise, so it'd be cool to see him return for Secret Wars. One of Maximus's greatest skills is his ability to rally a crowd, and the war-torn environment of Battleworld could be a perfect place for him to finally seize the power that he's desired for his whole life. Can't have a Marvel villains list these days without talking about Kang the Conqueror. The time-traveling bad guy will be our main threat in the MCU at least until the Kang Dynasty releases in 2025, though I think it's a safe bet that he'll also appear in Secret Wars. In the comic book source material, Kang was one of the many villains initially transported to Battleworld, and he wasted no time in trying to betray Dr. Doom and become the leader of the bad guys. Doom was barely fazed by this, and he had Ultron disintegrate the Conqueror before eventually bringing him back in order to send a message to the heroes. I have a pretty strong feeling that we'll see something similar play out in the movie adaptation of Secret Wars. It's a little tough to predict since we don't know what will happen in the Kang Dynasty, but if the comics are any indication, it's likely that Kang will take advantage of the chaos and enact a plan to take over the multiverse once and for all. Considering the fact that his variants exist all across the time stream, I could see Kang pulling an Avengers Endgame moment and rallying all of them in one place to help him in his quest. However, if there's anyone whose sheer force of will allow them to stand in Kang's way, it's Dr. Doom, and I really hope we end up seeing these two face off in the MCU. The fact that Secret Wars will mark the conclusion of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's multiverse saga is another reason why I think Kang will be an important part of the film. It'd be like if they just killed Thanos off at the beginning of Endgame. Oh wait. As cool as it would be to see Dr. Doom take over the title of main villain, Kang deserves his time in the spotlight, so I hope to see him and his variants play a major role in Secret Wars. The next entry on our list is Reed Richards, more specifically a villainous variant of him from the Ultimate Universe. While he initially started out as the dorky scientist we all know and love, he was eventually driven over the edge by a series of personal tragedies, resulting in him taking up the mantle of the Maker. In his new persona, Reed has devised countless schemes to conquer the world, as well as several plans to execute in the event of a doomsday scenario. This doomsday preparation eventually paid off during 2015's Secret Wars, in which he was able to escape the destruction of his Earth using a so-called life raft that he'd built. Upon arriving in the realm of God Emperor Doom, the Maker teamed up with his mainstream counterpart to find a way to defeat their archenemy. So how could the Maker appear in the MCU? Well, we've already been introduced to one variant of Reed, before we've even met our main version of the character. Something tells me that we'll continue to see variants of Reed from across the multiverse, and if that is the case, then Marvel has the perfect opportunity to introduce us to the Maker. He could start off masquerading as an ally to the other heroes during Secret Wars, before eventually revealing his true colors and trying to take control of the universe himself. This would also have the added benefit of potentially giving us a whole new, much darker take on Reed Richards and Dr. Doom's rivalry, setting the stage for a battle for the ages. After a down-on-his-luck laboratory technician named Owen Reese was bombarded with mysterious radiation, he discovered that he now had the ability to control and manipulate matter. Dubbing himself the Molecule Man, Reese embarked on a campaign of revenge against those he believed had turned their backs on him, but he was defeated by the Fantastic Four. After a couple more appearances throughout the years, Molecule Man was one of the many villains transported to Battleworld, where Dr. Doom helped him unlock his true potential. However, this was not the end of Reese's involvement with Dr. Doom, as years later, Doom captured him and siphoned his power to create the second Battleworld. After being freed by Reed Richards and the Maker, Molecule Man depowered Doom and instead transferred his power to Mr. Fantastic, allowing him to rebuild the multiverse. While he may not be an A-lister or even a B-lister, Molecule Man is one of the most powerful characters in Marvel history, and it was only with his intervention that the heroes were able to prevail in both versions of Secret Wars. If we really are going to see Doom or the Beyonder as the villain of the 6th Avengers movie, Reese may be the only one powerful enough to stop them. Ultron is one of the Avengers' greatest foes in the comics, but he just never quite got to that same level in the MCU. I mean, sure, his no-holds-barred brawl with the Watcher in the What If series was really fun, but in terms of the main timeline, Ultron was a bit of a letdown. Rather than the stone-cold world conqueror from the comics, we instead got someone who's basically just a quippy emo kid. This would bother me less if everyone else in the MCU wasn't also a sarcastic wisecracker, and this fact just kind of causes Ultron to blend in with the crowd. However, this problem could be rectified by having the robot come back in Secret Wars. When he and the other villains first arrived on Battleworld in the comics, Ultron was quickly depowered by Galactus. He was rebuilt later on down the line by Dr. Doom, who basically used him as his personal enforcer throughout the event. Doom's recreation of Ultron could very well be adapted for the MCU, especially if Sokovia ends up being connected to Latveria, as lots of fans have speculated. Seeing this dangerous foe resurface would surely throw the Avengers off their game, and Ultron is sure to be out for blood after his previous defeat. With Tony Stark dead and gone, I'm hopeful that his creation's quippage will be toned down a bit, especially especially since Doom doesn't really seem like the type of guy to tolerate someone running their mouth around him. Maybe Ultron could even retain the memories of his what-if variant, causing him to aim his sights on taking over the multiverse once again, only to be brutally reminded of his place by Doomer the Beyonder. I'm spitballing here, but the point is that the book isn't closed on Ultron, and Secret Wars provides the perfect opportunity to bring the megalomaniacal synthezoid back and do him justice.
There are no strings on me.
Remember when they spent most of Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer teasing Galactus? And then it turned out he was a giant cloud?
That's what the kids call epic fail.
Yeah, hopefully Marvel Studios treats the character with a bit more respect when he comes to the MCU. It is wild that I am saying that about a giant purple man who eats planets. Galactus is a godlike cosmic being who travels the universe, devouring world after world in an attempt to satiate his great hunger. At one point, he set his sights on Earth, but he and his herald, the Silver Surfer, were defeated and turned away by the Fantastic Four, with Galactus banishing the Surfer to Earth for his failure. Of course, this was only the first of many attempts by Galactus to devour our world, but so far he hasn't succeeded. I kind of hope he doesn't, because then we'd all die, and that would suck. In the 1980 Secret Wars event, Galactus is among the characters sent to Battleworld, which he attempts to devour in the hope that his appetite will finally be filled. However, he was beaten by the heroes and had his cosmic power stolen by, you guessed it, Dr. Doom, who went on to steal the Beyonder's power as well. He also has a minor appearance in the 2015 version, where he was controlled by Franklin Richards to fight the Thing. Unlike quite a few of the other characters on this list, I wouldn't say that Galactus is essential to have for a Secret Wars adaptation. The story could function just fine without him, but I can't deny that his presence would ratchet up both the in-story tension and the excitement to fans. It really seems like Marvel Studios is throwing everything they've got into the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, and now that they have his rights, I think the latter film would be a perfect place to finally give us a proper adaptation of the Devourer of Worlds. Let's talk about Venom, or as Eminem calls him, Venom! He's the lobster tank hopping dark mirror of Spider-Man who fans have been waiting to see appear in the MCU since his first solo movie came out. Now, Tom Hardy's incarnation of the character exists in his own separate universe, hanging out over there with Morbius.
It's Dr. Michael Morbius at your service.
But the post-credit scene of Spider-Man No Way Home saw Eddie Brock pay a visit to the main MCU, leaving behind a piece of his symbiote and seemingly setting the stage for the webhead to get his black suit. Comic fans will know that the symbiote first appeared in the 80s Secret Wars, and when Spidey brought it back to Earth with him and eventually rejected it, the suit made Eddie its new host, creating Venom. It's currently unknown what Marvel Studios' plan is for the black suit, but they wouldn't have put that post-credit scene in No Way Home without a plan. My theory is that the symbiote will end up making its way to Mac Gargan, turning him into the MCU's Venom and allowing him to return in Secret Wars. This would be a great way for Kevin Feige and crew to have their own version of the Lethal Protector without being beholden to whatever weird Sinister Six stuff Sony's got going on over there. We've spent most of this video looking at some big-time arch-villains, so let's take it down a notch and talk about the Wrecking Crew. This group of bad guys were originally just some small-time losers, who ended up acquiring mystical powers and becoming full-on supervillains, taking the names Bulldozer, Piledriver, Thunderball, and the Wrecker. As the Wrecking Crew, the four can usually be found picking fights against heroes that vastly outclass them, like Thor, Spider-Man, the Fantastic Four, and She-Hulk. In terms of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Wrecking Crew have been all but confirmed to show up in She-Hulk, Attorney at Law. Side note, I do think it's really cool that Marvel is using that show to introduce a bunch of obscure comic book characters like the Porcupine and Frogman, but if they really had guts, they'd use the show to introduce Big Wheel too. But that's beside the point. The comic book version of the Wrecking Crew are among the villains brought to Battleworld by the Beyonder, so if the same thing happens to the MCU's version of the group, that could be how She-Hulk ends up meeting the majority of the Avengers. Obviously, her series will be closely connected with the rest of the MCU, but it would be a lot of fun to have Jen's first major encounter with Earth's mightiest heroes feature her beating the snot out of the Wrecking Crew right in front of them, only for the heroes to question who exactly they are, since the Wrecking Crew are way below their level. The fearsome foursome have the potential to become really fun recurring villains for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Secret Wars could mark the first of many encounters between them and the Avengers.